If you're going to become your own banker, you need to learn how to be a banker. And we have none of us been taught, trained to think like a banker. This book does that. This book helps us rethink our thinking to become our own banker. And each one of those words in that phrase, Nelson was very intentional. You're becoming, that's a process. Your own banker. I'm not going to be your banker. Now I will teach you. I will coach you. I will strategize with you. I will hold your hand as long as you need me to. But the goal is that you become your own banker. And in order to do that, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You have to drink. You have to drink deeply from this well, and you have to take it in and learn it for yourself. This is an entire paradigm shift. It is a lifestyle change. It will be the foundation for everything else that you do.
Welcome to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we rethink money, ditch the system, and rediscover what it means to truly thrive well. I'm Tricia Miller, mom of 7, financial coach, and founder of ThriveWell. Around here, we believe wealth is more than numbers. It's about freedom, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts. If you're ready to challenge the norm and take back control of your financial life, you're in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Bankless by Design podcast. Today I am here again with my son, and we are walking through the second half of the introduction in our Becoming Your Own Banker series. And today we're going to be discussing whether or not the infinite banking concept should be compared to an investment, if it's about a rate of return, whether it should be treated as a pension plan, or if it's a get-rich-quick scheme. What exactly is the infinite banking concept? And what is it not? So let's get started. We left off, I believe, at the second paragraph in the right-hand column on page 3.
You want me to just go ahead and start reading?
Jonathan, yes, if you'd go ahead and start reading with that paragraph, that would be great. And don't forget, we have our handy green and red pen to underline what it is versus what it is not.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Well, I'll get us started. This book is not about investments of any kind. It is about how one finances the things of life, which can certainly include investments. It is not about rates of return. There's your red pen. As time goes by, interest rates are up and interest rates are down. But the process of banking goes on no matter what is happening. It is a well-known fact that banks make more money during times of low interest rates than when they are high.
All right, let's stop right there, because actually there were couple of red pen moments there right at the very beginning. This book, or even this concept, is not about investments of any kind. Red pen, underline that. It is not about an investment of any kind. Instead, we're going to take our green pen. It says it is about how one finances things in life, which can certainly include investments.
Yeah.
So, doesn't mean that we don't invest. It just means that this is actually something we can do as a both and.
So, Kira, tell me if my thinking on this is correct or not. My understanding is that we should be utilizing this as a tool to act as a filter for our money. We should be putting our money through this system first, as we discussed in the previous episode, to recapture the interest that we would otherwise be losing to third-party banks or other financing companies. And that you can then utilize those funds for whatever investments that you so please, right?
Absolutely. Capitalize the system. We bank all of the time, whether we're investing or not. And then we use money that we maybe have had in our savings account to go and make an investment. Well, similar idea here. We are going to use the infinite banking concept for the process of banking. It's how we finance the things that we need in life. It is not in and of itself an investment. And it goes on to say it is not about a rate of return. We have been so conditioned to think about rates of return. We are chasing rates of return constantly. I personally think part of that is because we have been taught to save a sliver of our income. And because we have to make that sliver of our income, that 5%, maybe 10% if we're lucky, that needs this big rate of return in order to grow big enough that we can one day withdraw from it, spend it down, and hope we have enough of it left to get us through the end of our life. Therefore, if that's our goal, then rates of return are really, really important. But this is about banking and taking over the banking function. And we have to put on our banker hat. So our mindset is higher rate, bigger, better number. So if we look at, well, this investment is giving 10% and this one is giving 15, we're immediately going to say, well, the 15% is better. It's just a bigger number, better. Well, guess what? When it comes to banking, there's this little key piece. And every time I read this book, I learn something new. And today is no exception. As I was preparing for this episode and I'm reading through the introduction, I see this incredible little sentence that just hits me different. It's what happens every time. He says at the very end of this paragraph, it is a well-known fact that banks make more money during times of low interest rates than when rates are high. So if I just said that our mindset is bigger number better, we're chasing a higher rate of return. And then Nelson just puts this little sentence here. Banks make more money during times of low interest rates than when rates are high. Wait a minute. Whoa, somebody stop the truck.
Yeah, how does that work?
Because I had just a light bulb moment when I read that. And I was like, oh, because we are becoming our own banker. It's not about an investment or a rate of return. For bankers, lower interest rates actually make more money. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to say about this. How does this work? Let's just put on our banker hat for a moment. If you're the banker and somebody deposits their money at your bank and you pay them 1% for their deposit and you turn around and you lend it out at 4%, how much have you made?
3%.
Okay.
No, not even. It's not even right. Percentage math is like the hardest math ever. I swear.
The average person is going to say 3%. They're looking at that arbitrage. 4% minus 1%, 3%.
No, that's not what it is. Because if you're paying, like if you had $100 and you're paying somebody 1%, then it'd be like 101. But then you're going and giving it to 104. Oh, so I'm trying to remember because it's like you talked about before, where it's like if you're in investments, right, and you make 50% or then you lose 50% and you make 50%, it's not equal. Is it like that? Am I wrong? Sorry, I'm just
You're fine. No, you're fine. This is great because this is exactly what the average person is going to do. It's totally fine. So let's just change that to dollars to make it a little easier to understand. So in other words, I pay you $1, but I turn around and lend it out and make $4.
Mm-hmm.
I have made $3 extra, but $3 compared to $1 is a 300% return.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I made a 300% return, not a 3% return, between 1% and 4% if I'm the banker. But what if I had to pay you 4% and I could turn around and lend it out for 8%? Now how much have I made? I've doubled my money.
So, oh geez, oh, I can't do math right now.
It's okay. It's okay. This is mother-son money talk. So it's all good.
I haven't done basic percentage math. Oh God, you put me on the spot. I can't even, my brain can't even process.
I love it. We doubled our money. We made 100% rate of return.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So bigger numbers, I only made 100%. Lower numbers, I made 300%. I did 3 times as well with less interest rates. So
well, just to play devil's advocate, in a situation where banks are loaning at an 8% interest rate to individuals, is that assuming that the bank is then having to offer a better savings, or interest rate to the person putting into the bank?
Sure. But here's the thing. There's at least 2 principles at work here. One is when rates are lower, more people are willing to borrow money. Businesses are more willing to invest more into their business. So when rates are lower, you're also going to be having a greater velocity of dollars. Mm-hmm. The bank is going to be able to turn the cans of peas on their shelf more often because more people are willing to borrow that money. So they not only are making a greater arbitrage because everybody's looking at it as low interest environment and they compare 1 to 4 and they're cool with that. But if you started making 40% over here, your depositor is going to be wanting some bigger money too. Okay.
Mhm.
They're going to look at that as that's exorbitant, right? So there's a mindset there. How you think matters, but also a willingness to borrow. So you're going to borrow more often. More loans are going to be going through the books of the bank, and the lower interest rates actually have a greater arbitrage or spread rate wise, right? So they're making 300% on that money as opposed to only 100% on that money. So all of those things means that lower rates are better for the bank. So when I was just thinking about this, I was like, when Nelson is talking about this is how one finances the things in life. The name of the book is Becoming Your Own Banker. We have to start thinking like a banker. And a banker is happy with lower rates and the arbitrage and the ability to have that velocity and flip that can of peas, which we'll talk about in the grocery store example down the road. How many times can we turn that money over? So that is one reason this is not about a rate of return. That is one. It's also not an investment. It is life insurance. It is a place to warehouse your wealth and use it as a financing tool to access capital to go do the things that you need to do in life. And that can certainly, as Nelson says, include investments. This does not exclude investments. Don't get us wrong here. And I will add this one other thing, and that is when people want to know what is the rate of return inside the policy. Let's remember that it's life insurance, and the growth inside the policy is calculated on a proprietary and actuarial formula. Here's what I mean by this. You have a formula that calculates your life expectancy, when you are likely to die, how long before you turn 121, and a guaranteed gross rate of return that is proprietary information with the life insurance company. So if you want to figure out that formula, feel free. I'm not going to worry about that formula. I'm going to know that by contract, the life insurance company is on the hook for my death benefit. And in that private contract, the cash values must rise to meet the death benefit when the contract would technically endow by age 121. So every day I age and get another day older, I am growing closer to age 121. Therefore, without fail, the cash values inside my policy are rising every single day, guaranteed by contract. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know a rate of return. In fact, in the beginning, if you actually looked at an illustration, you're going to say, there's no rate of return there in the beginning if I look at what the illustration shows. But later on down the road, I might be doubling my money. I'm quadrupling my money. Now I'm 10xing my money, depending on how close to age 121 I become. So if I'm solving my need for finance and all of the interest that was otherwise leaving my system is now coming back to me and my money's growing at the same time, do I really care about a rate of return anyways? No.
Not so much, no.
All right.
Yeah, we're going to have to give myself credit for the fact that it's 9 p.m. and it was a long day, Mom. I can't do percentage math. Oh, sorry. Oof.
That's all good.
Actually,
let's go on from here to a word of caution is in order.
Yeah. A word of caution is in order. Later in the book, you will be looking at illustrations of life insurance policies that show how the concept works as compared with how most folks go about solving their financial affairs. Most of the illustrations were developed in 2000 and represent dividend scales in effect at that time. Presently, interest earnings are lower and hence dividend scales are lower. But in comparison with other methods of financing the things of life, the difference in results remains the same.
It's all relative, in other words.
Yeah. Just take note that these were made in 2000 and today is 2025, so things should look different.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Moving on. It is not, here's your red pen, it is not a procedure to get rich quickly. To the contrary, it requires long-range planning. I'm educated as a forester, having worked in that field as a consultant for 10 years. I tend to think 70 years in the future. I won't be here and neither will you. But there is no reason not to behave in this manner. Plan as if you are going to live forever and live as if you are going to die today. Appears to me to be a good thought. One can learn how to plan and act intergenerationally. Though that's one of the primary advantages of having been a forester. I learned to think beyond the lifespan of my own current generation.
All right. Excellent. There's just some good old fashioned down to earth practical wisdom right in the middle of that. Plan as if you're going to live forever and live as if you're going to die today. All right. You did mention the red pen.
Yes, I did.
It is not a procedure to get rich quickly. Immediately then pick up the green pen because he says, to the contrary, it requires long range planning. Where the infinite banking concept gets labeled as some kind of get rich quick scheme is beyond me. Have you ever looked at an illustration and looked how many years down the road? We're looking well into the future. And
with this being, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
With this being something that requires a little bit more long range thinking and planning, and I know personally, because I have my own policies, that this does take, as we've talked about, capitalizing a policy, that it takes, as you've used the analogy of rocket fuel, and you got to get your spaceship out of the atmosphere and into space. And it requires a lot of fuel to get to that point. But then once it does, so what in your mind, and obviously this is going to depend, of course, on everybody's circumstance and an individual's policy, et cetera. But when does it become truly a benefit to you as an individual to have one of these policies specially designed? And when does it kind of become usable for the financing capabilities that we talked about previously?
Okay. Well, when is it going to become a benefit? Well, when you plant a tree, when does that tree become a benefit? Well, it has to start at some point, right? Before it can actually have shade. We talk about, when is the best time to plant the tree? Well, 20 years ago, of course, but the next best time is today. Because yes, the ultimate benefits of that tree are going to be well down the road. However, having said that, it doesn't take as long as people think to be able to start using it as a financing tool. Now, are you going to be cash flowing day one? No, of course not. In fact, you're probably not going to start cash flowing for at least 4, 5, 7 years. And then not cumulatively cash flowing, meaning every penny that you've put into the policy, cash flowing beyond that until 10 or 15 years even. But you can actually start a policy and get this thing underway. And within 15 days of starting the policy, begin to borrow against at least a portion of the amount of money that you have put into the premium to start the process of banking if you so choose. Now, I am a strong advocate of capitalizing a system, getting into good discipline habits, start treating it as savings, setting money aside for the future, but knowing that these are dollars that you can access and use even as soon as 15 to 30 days from starting when you need to. So it's not that there's no benefit whatsoever. And in fact, when you pay that premium, if, God forbid, you should walk out in front of a bus tomorrow and get hit by the bus, the benefit is immediate. Mm-hmm. That death benefit is in force. So it really depends on how you're looking at this thing, but we should be looking at it with long range planning in mind. Mm-hmm. The sooner you start, the sooner you reap all of the rewards. Let me put it that way.
Well, speaking of, thinking long term and planning ahead, and Nelson here mentions that he learned to think beyond the lifespan of his current generation. How should we be planning ahead? I mean, obviously, none of us here have a crystal ball. We can't see 70 years in the future. And he talks about he's planning 70 years ahead. How should we, as just an average person, go about, looking further into the future, planning accordingly? And how should we be, planning with our life insurance and just with our day to day?
Well, I think there are several ways in which thinking long term is beneficial. So, for example, when you're thinking about how much premium do I want to pay right now? Well, right now, you may find $10,000 a year, let's just say, to be challenging. But if you start thinking long range, you're going to have some pay raises in front of you. More than likely, you've got a good amount of earning power in front of you if you're especially your age. When you're my age, you might be thinking of it in terms of how can I start policies on my grandchildren? So it comes into play in several different ways, I guess. It comes into play when you think about how much money should I be paying in premium? How much money do I think I'm going to be making in 10 years? Sometimes that is taking a good look backwards too. If you think about what you made 5 years ago, you might be surprised to find out how much more you're making now. And that can help you to think into the future by looking back as well. Now, not as much for you at such a young age. Perhaps
not
not
a lot of a baseline to go off of.
But when I look back at old, 1040s, I'm like, wow, how did we even live? Right. So you can see that expansion over time and then look to that in the future. The other thing is that you want to think about future windfalls. So part of thinking long range is, for example, perhaps I'm going to sell some property in the future. Well, if I'm going to do that, Nelson actually added that as one of his golden rules at the very end of his life. He was like, plan for a windfall. Some of those windfalls might be, oh, there's a death benefit coming to me. I'm going to need a place to put that. So I need to plan for that now. Or it could be, I've got a bunch of kids in my house right now, but there's going to come a windfall when they are finally out of college and they're done and out of my house. And suddenly I have pay raises and I don't have those expenses. That's a windfall too. So all of those are things that might help us to think a little bit more long term and plan for how much premium we need to pay. And also, who do we want to care for in the future? All of those things. He mentions the forestry, which is interesting because we'll go through that in a chapter in the future, but it's literally, after everything, I think every 20, 25 years, I can't recall, there's a cutting of the forest and that allows more growth. But it's all based on 70 to 100-year range, I believe. So that is what he was referring to that got him to thinking long term. So same sort of principles here.
Yeah, not many of us are foresters these days. So it's definitely a different perspective than I think most of us have.
Right. It takes a lot of patience.
I can't imagine. Yeah, in 25 years, I'll have my inventory.
Right. But planning for that because it will come. And that's the thing. The future's coming. We either plan for it or we don't, but it's going to be here anyways. So you might as well get started and think about it.
Shall we move on?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Next paragraph. Becoming your own banker is not a tax qualified idea of any sort. The income tax law as we know it today has only been around since 1913. Life insurance has been around for over 200 years and is not a creature of any tax code. It is nothing more than like-minded people contracting with one another to solve a financial problem.
All right. So it's not a tax qualified idea of any sort. It's life insurance has been around long before the IRS code. And I think when he's saying it's not tax qualified idea of any sort, it's also not a government-based program. So red pen for that. It's not a tax qualified idea. But green pen for it is nothing more, or that's kind of saying it in the negative. It actually is like-minded people contracting with one another to solve a financial problem, which I think is a little nod to his Austrian economic philosophy, because it is about less government, more about private people coming together, which I do find interesting. I was thinking about this the other day when we were talking about everyone upset about what's going on with health insurance. And you mentioned, what was the name of the group?
Crowd Health.
Crowd Health. So when government programs are failing us, what do? We wind up finding resources to take care of one another. And that's essentially what this is before there ever was a government program. I will say that one thing that might be helpful for our listeners to recognize is that though it is not a tax qualified idea of any sort, it does have tax favored status with the IRS because it is classified as life insurance. So let's just talk about the definition of life insurance for a minute. Life insurance, any insurance, is intended not to make you rich, but to make you whole. It is making up for a loss. So if you have the loss of life, you have a loss, and the death benefit is making you whole. That's why you have a maximum human life value based on the amount of income and life expectancy that they can actually have life insurance for. So that's why it is not classified as something that needs to be taxed. It transfers to your heirs tax-free. You can borrow against your cash values tax-free. I will also add, there are ways that you can have tax consequences if you withdraw instead of borrow against, because as a loan, there's no tax consequences. But if you withdraw money that is beyond your cost basis, or you surrender the policy and you have money coming back to you that is above and beyond your cost basis, then you do have a taxable event. And I will just say this, that is the best of my knowledge. If you want tax advice on a life insurance policy, please seek a qualified professional tax consultant. I am not here giving tax advice. I'm just trying to educate upon the best to my knowledge of how this works. Which is why, though, with the infinite banking concept, we teach you to borrow against, not to withdraw, and certainly to surrender either, when instead you could just access that capital via loans without a tax consequence, and then it does transfer tax-free to your heirs. So it is highly favored, shall we say, through the tax code because it is classified as life insurance.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
Anything further? Okay.
No, I think that's good. So there is no such thing as having too much money in the bank. Wealth must reside somewhere. What better place to have it reside than here? From this residence, one can do anything that one can conceive. This is an advantage that most folks ignore in their thought process and therefore limit their effectiveness.
All right. There's a little bit of an imagination there, right? He says later on in the book, you'll see that he says the infinite banking concept is an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. Well, here's some imagination. You're going to store your money here. Wealth has to reside somewhere anyways. Why not here, where it's going to continue to grow, tax-free, go to your heirs tax-free, has all of these incredible benefits. You're going to have part ownership in it. You're going to be the one profiting from the use of this money, not someone else. And you can do anything you can conceive of. That's where I was seeing this imagination piece. This is an advantage that most people ignore in their thought process. Again, Nelson is emphasizing the importance of thinking. All right.
So is there a limit to like how much you can put? I mean, obviously by him saying there's no such thing as having too much money in the bank, I'm assuming that there is not some kind of limit, but also kind of piggybacking off of that, should this become the one-stop solution for all your financing need? Can it become that point to where, this can finance everything, or what's he getting at there?
Well, yes, absolutely. Now, is it the only thing you should do in life? No. Make investments, do other things, right? But if you've got to have a place for your money to reside in the meantime, what better place is there than this? And yes, to your question about can you finance everything in life? You absolutely can. And Nelson certainly did. He got to a place in life. I think it took him 13 years, he said, to get the snakes and dragons out of his life, referring to third-party banks. After that, he spent many years. He had 42 policies on his wife, himself, children, grandchildren, and also even some business partners and associates, to the point where he was able to be sure that neither he nor his children ever had to darken the doors of a bank to get a car loan, a mortgage, or anything else. They were able to finance everything that they needed in life through their own system of policies by borrowing against the cash values. And that all came as a result of him learning to pay higher premium, which is why he says, is there such thing as putting too much money in the bank? No.
So is it truly like, limitless? Is there any, to Nelson's point of, the imagination, is there anything that the life insurance can say that you can't do with this money? I mean, it's your money, right?
You have the absolute right to use these dollars that you can access The only limit you have is how much you have put in and how much it has grown that you can access. But as far as when you borrow against those life insurance cash values, there is no credit check. There's no questions asked what you're going to use it for. That is yours to decide. There is freedom of choice here. Absolutely.
All right. Should we move on to the next one?
Yep. Let's just do the next one.
Let me make it abundantly clear. I am not talking about a bank in the conventional sense of the word. I am demonstrating that one can use dividend-paying whole life insurance to solve one's need for finance throughout one's life. So how is that different than a normal bank?
Well, he's trying to clarify here that he's not talking about a conventional bank. You are not building a bank on the corner, a brick and mortar bank. You're not even building an online bank. Okay. This is a life insurance policy that you're going to use for the process of banking. And I think Nelson also clarifies this here because, quite honestly, the compliance departments at the life insurance company do not want to be referred to as a bank. So, because they're not a bank, they are a life insurance company. So it's important that we keep that distinction. We're using the life insurance policy to conduct our banking process. So that requires a little bit of imagination. But the reality is the life insurance company has set up the administration for us. They have everything that we need to conduct the act of banking with them without them being an actual conventional bank.
Got it. Makes sense.
All right.
Hopefully this book will give you a new perspective on the idea of retirement. I prefer to use the words passive income. That is money coming in that you can count on and you don't do anything to earn it at that time. Study the illustrations carefully and you will see that very high premium dividend paying whole life insurance is the ultimate vehicle to produce such income. So is Nelson recommending this as like a retirement plan? Essentially, is this why it often gets, compared to a 401k?
Well, I don't know if this is why it gets compared to a 401k, but this is really good point here because I realized after listening to our last episode that there was something that I feel like we didn't clarify real well that I wanted to hear. And that is when he says, where does he say it here?
He says whole life insurance is the ultimate vehicle to produce such income.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
It's at the end.
Whole life insurance is the ultimate vehicle to produce such income. So we had talked about passive income in our last episode. And we were talking about it's either people at work or money at work. And so people think, well, I've got money in my 401k and that's money at work. But that is not creating cash flow. And there's a difference. If you have money in a 401k, the only way for you to access that money is to withdraw it. Now you're drawing it down. And of course, when you retire on that, that means that you're going to have to be very careful in retirement not to withdraw that principal down so much that should the market turn on you, it's suddenly not lasting your entire life. So a lot of people have that problem and that struggle in their senior years because they may have saved up this big nest egg, but now they've got to be cautious that they don't spend it too quickly. That is a different thing than creating cash flow. So when he says here that, first of all, I love that he calls it passive income time. He is not a fan of the word retirement. And I have adopted that. I never want to retire. I always want to be doing something I love. When people think about retirement, well, first of all, I don't think it's a biblical idea. Moses never talked about retiring. I know I'm digressing here just a little bit, but I do think it's important for us to think about retirement gives this connotation. Now I'm just going to sit in my rocking chair the rest of my life, or I'm going to travel the rest of my life, but I'm not really doing anything of usefulness or resourcefulness or contributing to the rest of humanity. So I don't want that to be me. I want to be right up till the day I die, contributing to the good of the world around me and doing something that God made me to do. But this passive income, the life insurance policy, if you have set this up and you have capitalized this well, when you get into those later years, this is going to create a cash flow that you can access that will never stop generating cash flow. In fact, opposite to that idea of withdrawing down a pile of money and hoping it doesn't run out, every year the cash flow grows. It's increasing every single year. guaranteed by contract. So this is why Nelson can say whole life insurance is the ultimate vehicle to produce such income. And it requires no work from you. It's not even going to require checking on the property manager on your properties. It's not going to depend upon the tenant paying the rent. This is guaranteed cash flow. Totally and truly passive. So I think he's right. It is the ultimate source of passive income in your later years. Do you see the difference there, though?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's go forward.
The infinite banking concept is a major paradigm shift for most folks. It will require several thorough readings for a full understanding of its message. The concept is not complicated. It is just different from the way the majority thinks and behaves. In fact, it is the ultimate in simplicity.
Okay. Simple. Yes. Much to learn. Thus, I could easily say, oh my goodness, even preparing for this episode, rereading the introduction for the umpteenth time, I learned something new. Unbelievable. The reason is not because the magic is in the book. The reason is I'm in a different mental space, or I'm, shall we say, standing downriver a little bit further. So you see things differently.
How often would you think, or how often would you recommend people read the book? So just off of that, you know that you're in a different phase of life, different mentality. I would think that immediately you should be reading it at least every time you pay a yearly premium. But what's your kind of base?
No, I agree with that. Actually, I make that part of my annual review with people and just remind them, hey, this might be a great time to reread the book. So I think an annual reading is great. I like to be sure that I take a copy with me on the airplane anytime I travel, because I can always pick it up on the plane, read through it in, an hour and a half, 2 hours plane ride. Have accomplished it again. But an annual reading is great. I know some practitioners, some folks on the Nelson Nash board. Oh my goodness. I think there's one gentleman told me he read it 400 and some times so far. He still learned something new. I'm not there yet.
One day, right? Wow.
All right. Let's keep going.
There is an extensive reading list in the book, and you are encouraged to read them all. Education is an ongoing process, and there is no such thing as having arrived at knowledge. There have been many people that have had a glimpse of what this book is all about, but none, to my knowledge, no one has put together a comprehensive rationale such as you will see here. Read it with an open mind, and you will discover a whole new financial world.
Amen to that. Okay. So Nelson is encouraging you to study, to learn, to rethink your thinking. And most people aren't even thinking. Most people are just following the herd. Let's learn to think differently. So he also recommends in the back of the book, and he has a long list in the back of the book. That's my next goal, is to get to reading some of those books. I have started some of them, but there is a lot more yet to do for sure. But honestly, to sum it all up, you really need to be a good student. It is a financial tool. And if you're going to become your own banker, you need to learn how to be a banker. And none of us been taught, trained to think like a banker. This book does that. This book helps us rethink our thinking to become our own banker. And each one of those words in that phrase, Nelson was very intentional. You're becoming, that's a process. Your own banker. I'm not going to be your banker. Now I will teach you. I will coach you. I will strategize with you. I will hold your hand as long as you need me to. But the goal is that you become your own banker. And in order to do that, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You have to drink. You have to drink deeply from this well, and you have to take it in and learn it for yourself. This is an entire paradigm shift. It is a lifestyle change. It will be the foundation for everything else that you do. Any final thoughts that you have on this chapter?
Yeah, just kind of circling back to those last two little paragraphs there for yourself, and just so we can leave this off with a last thought of reflection from you. What has changed most personally in your own mindset since you discovered this process, and even just, through reading the book each time?
When I first started reading Becoming Your Own Banker, it was a crack in the door of just a whole new way of thinking. Really, truly, the first time I read this, it was just like the door cracked with some hope and a ray of sunshine that life could actually be simpler and much more profitable. Because you learn that we've been swimming upstream. We have this headwind that we're constantly fighting against with hands tied behind our back. And suddenly you're free and you're able to see a better future and possibilities open up to you. So it's changed so many things. And even teaching me how to think differently, recognizing that our thought process matters so much. If I want to sit around and dwell on everything that is bad in my life, well, I'm going to be depressed, And some of that is even just Nelson thinking, how are we thinking about things?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What if I decide to think about the possibilities and be more optimistic? I might no longer be depressed. I might be cheerful. I might succeed. Imagine that. So it has really changed my life in so many ways. I don't think I can lay my finger on just one, but enough to make me say, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, because this experience that I've had through this, and I'm just getting started, is the same experience I want to help others experience. Let's just sum this up real quick. I had a couple little things here. This chapter, this introduction, answers all the rebuttals that you hear out there in the big wide world, all the noise that is on social media. Isn't IBC a get rich quick scheme? No, it's not. Is it just a sales tactic? Absolutely not. Well, what about that rate of return? It's not about a rate of return. It's not an investment, nor is it to be compared to one. It's not a tax qualified plan. It's not. So what is it? Jonathan, how would you answer that question now after reading this introduction? What is the infinite banking concept?
It is a long-term plan to recapture the interest that you are typically losing to third-party banks and other financing companies to solve the need for finance in your life.
Very good. I love it. Great job. It's a financial tool to take over the banking function in your life. Becoming your own banker. It's really very simple. We've just never thought that was a possibility before. If you can get this chapter under your belt with good understanding, and I say this to my listeners, you're ready to dive into the rest of this book, and it will make the rest of this book so much simpler to comprehend. All right. Thank you so much for bearing with us through the introduction. I hope you all have gotten something good out of this. And until next time, y'all have a great week. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you all so much. Till next time.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we're done with the system and we're doing money differently. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs it, and visit us at banklessbydesign.com to learn how you can start living Bankless by Design.